Okay, folks, real talk.
Oh, shit's getting real, people.
Feminists. Social justice warriors, man-haters. Aren't they crazy?
Okay, yeah, man-haters, feminists and social justice warriors, they're crazy. At least most feminists are crazy. All SJWs are fucking bonkers. And all man-haters are fucking bonkers. Which, by the way, almost all man-haters are SJWs and feminists. Isn't that funny? Just thought I'd mention that, people.
Pickup artists. Men's rights advocates, misogynists, aren't they awful?
Your other mistake is to include the POAs in the same sentence as the MRAs. And by the way, just a little observation here, I could totally be biased, but I've noticed that most of the misogynists don't come from MRAs, they come from elsewhere. Most of them aren't even MRAs, they're just either religious people or crazy people. POAs, I've noticed, don't really hate women, they're more neglectful and apathetic towards women. I've met very few online that seem to hate them, they just seem to have a very backward view of what their role is and what they can do with them, which is not the same as hatred. But please, do go on, mate. I do know these are some mirror imaging things that you're trying to do, but it doesn't really work. But I'm going to let you continue.
Now, how did those two statements make you feel?
Well, let's be clear, not all feminists are man-haters, and not all MRAs and pickup artists hate women, in fact. I feel that maybe there's more man-hatred in feminism than there are women-hatred in MRAs. And besides, you missed one important group, the MGTOWs. You forgot the MGTOWs. How did you forget the MGTOWs? Because that's a more comparable thing in when it comes to hatred of a certain gender, because I've noticed a lot of the more extremists tend to come from MGTOWs than they do MRAs, and I'm not saying all MGTOWs are misogynists, no I'm not, I'm just seeing that's where most of it from our end seems to come from, not the MRAs, because they're more interested in, legal shit rather than, gendered shit like the feminists and the MGTOWs who are crazy are into. But hey, I digress. The statements are more truthful than others, so the MRA ones is not very truthful because you're putting the PUAs in the same bracket, and there's not as much hatred on the MRA side as there are from the feminists, who have a long history of man-hatred, stretching 50 years, hell, maybe even 100 years if you want to go that far. White Ribbon Campaign, anyone? Andrea Dworkin? Scum, which is still here despite the death of Solanus, and Clementine Ford and Bahama Mustafa, all these people. But please, do go on.
Did it give you an idea about who I am or what I believe? Have you said something like them before? It feels good.
It doesn't really say anything about what you think, because you were just giving me some statements and telling me what I thought about them, not in relation to you. I could tell they were hypothetical anyway. And no, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. I don't even feel anything.
Right. It feels validating to have an enemy.
They see MGTOWs, MRAs, and egalitarians wouldn't have an enemy if feminism would stop attacking us at every possible opportune moment, calling us misogynists for sticking up for men's rights. I'm just saying, this whole situation could have been avoided if they weren't so power hungry. It's not necessarily validating, it's more of an obstruction, and it's totally unnecessary. I think that's what a lot of MRAs and egalitarians, etc. feel. That's just my opinion, and I could totally be wrong, but I don't think it's validating to have an enemy, particularly.
To be able to judge people and sort them into one of two groups. Us and them, ally and enemy.
Yeah, but the feminists have already done that, and they have done for the last 40 years, okay? They've been doing this for a long, long time. We didn't ask for it. We would love their help. If they are so interested in sticking up for equal rights among everyone, how come they're only interested in supremacy and not actually doing anything for men's rights and stopping us from doing things? They turned it into us and them because they're the ones who run the whole show. They're the establishment. It's an establishment thing to pit people in an us versus them game. And so you can hardly blame MRAs and egalitarians for being a bit more tribalistic than usual because of such antagonistic behaviour from feminists for the last couple of decades. Creating this false equivalency isn't working, mate.
She said something about oppression, so she's a feminist and she's bad.
No, it's when she says something that is against equal rights and humanism, etc, etc, then what she is saying is bad. And who knows, maybe it does actually say something about her character that, yeah, maybe she is bad, like Clementine Ford, for example. But just saying oppression doesn't mean she's bad. It just makes her a whiny narcissist, which again, doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person, they're just a whiny narcissist who needs to grow up. Or actually look up the word oppression in the dictionary. Just saying.
He said something about divorce rape, so he's a misogynist and he's bad.
I've never seen anyone on my side, so to speak, although this is making it us versus them, but fuck it, I need to say something so that everyone else will understand. Talk about divorce rate. I think that's more of a feminist thing, talking about rape. Unless, of course, we're talking about changing the definition legally of rape, then that would be a men's rights issue. But divorce rape? Really? You gotta define that for me. Maybe someone in the chat will know, but I don't get that bit. I've not even heard feminists discuss it either, now that I think about it. I think you probably must have misheard something.
It's so easy. All you have to do is say, that other group sucks, and you're in. You have allies, you have a community, and most importantly, you have a way to quickly determine whether someone else deserves your respect. Do they see the world like I do? Or are they wrong?
Although I agree with this actually does happen in a lot of groups. The difference is this: feminists will use misogynist as a way to paint someone a particular way in order to virtue signal to other feminists and to neutrals that this person should not be talked to because they're apparently hateful, even if they say nothing hateful and it's full of truth. They will literally call anyone a misogynist, even their own, if they step out of line. MRAs will only call someone a misandrist or a man-hater if they literally are one. That's why we call Clementine Ford a misandrist, and why we don't call someone like Camille Paglia a man-hater, because she's not a man-hater. And there are lots of feminists that may have, created some of the most important stuff in their philosophy that probably didn't hate men, but have indirectly contributed to it, and we can't call them misandrists, we just say they made a mistake or something. Feminists, no, they will just call you a misogynist, and SJWs will too. It's just something that they do to paint you as something that you're not, and to tell people to stay away from you, and to basically silence you. That's what it is. MRAs don't do that, egalitarians don't do that, and not even MGTOWs do that. PUAs will probably call you a cuck or some kind of beta male, although there's a lot of overlap with MGTOWs with the beta male cuck thing, but they'll use that to silence you if they're so inclined, but not as much as feminists.
There's just one problem with this approach. It's wrong.
As you? Just because you think it's wrong doesn't mean that other people find it wrong. Some people might think it's the best way to do it. You see, we have no choice but to consider feminists, at least feminists who are against men's rights or try to stop us from gaining men's rights, as enemies. We don't consider all feminists enemies. Like I said, Camille Paglia is not considered an enemy. Christina Hoff Sommers isn't really considered an enemy either. And the woman who I always forget her name, who's making the red pill philosophy, we do not consider an enemy. Erin Pitsey, although she's not a feminist anymore, did start off initially as a women's rights advocate and activist, is a legend amongst our circles, the egalitarians, the MRAs, etc. We deeply respect the women's rights advocates who actually got shit done during the last 100 years. So, the suffragists, not to be confused with the suffragettes, who were the ones bombing letterboxes and throwing themselves in front of horses, and those in the 60s who managed to gain reproductive rights for women, and yes, even an equal pay. We respect those people. They're not enemies. If anything, they're natural allies, because they would probably agree with us in many respects, but not the rest of feminism, the bulk of it. They are enemies because they made us their enemies, and in return you have to treat someone the way they treat you, the golden rule. So here we are, mate, and it's the only approach we can do, because most feminists are not willing to come to the table to discuss the ideas, and so far I'd say the approach is working. We're gaining ground and they're losing ground. But please continue.
It's lazy, it's oversimplifying, and above all, it's harmful.
Then stop blaming both sides for this, considering there was one side who actually started this whole mess in the first place, and it doesn't begin with M, it begins with F. This false equivalence is really not working again, mate. You see, the problem is, when we have something as polarizing as this debate, there's obviously going to develop this whole tribalistic bullshit thing, and sadly, that's what happens. It's the same thing with left versus right, conservatives and liberals and libertarians in the middle, and all sorts of bullshit, It's the way it is, and it's not going to change until both sides agree unanimously to discuss things properly and we can get things done. But that's not going to happen because the feminists want to shut everything down and label us as the enemies. Yes, we consider them an enemy too, but that's only because they give us no choice, and we only oppose those who oppose us. The other feminists who don't are considered friends or neutrals or even allies. There's a difference between a friend and an ally. You don't have to be a friend and an ally at the same time. But hey, whatever. Continue.
If you're anti-feminist, and you believe in the idea of, say, not all men, right? If a man does something awful and someone is criticizing men, you jump in and say, well, not all men are like that, right? If you believe that that's a valid thing to say, then why do you not extend the same basic concept to not all feminists?
I'm an anti-feminist, and I literally just said that a couple of minutes ago, did I not? See, the thing is, you're generalising all anti-feminists, and you're going to generalise all feminists too. You put us in brackets just to make sure that you make people think you're being equal here. See, the fact you put us in brackets makes me a bit wary about you, but nevertheless, I must give you the benefit of the doubt. We do that. There are some idiots, obviously, who don't agree with the whole not all women, not all feminists thing, and they tend to be MGTOWs, and they tend to be more extremist MRAs, and I don't know, maybe pick-up artists, but I've never seen pick-up artists do that. I, on the other hand, always mention feminists who are good. There's not a lot of them, because to me, and I've found too much evidence of this, there's just simply not enough good feminists, and I don't think there ever has been. But I always make sure I mention them, and I always make sure I give benefit of the doubt to everyone, because, you know, one person does not represent a whole demographic. One person, or a small group of people, do not make a norm in said demographic. And I don't think most anti-feminists do that, actually. I think you're kind of straw-manning the rest, or generalising us. On the other hand, most feminists will generalise all men, and they will say yes all men, yes all white men, kill all white men, etc, etc. They will do this, because that's what they literally think. There's a minority who don't do that. That's the big difference between the two sides, but let's just see where the false equivalence takes me.
If lots of men do something wrong, that doesn't make all men guilty of their sins. Why do you not treat feminists the same way?
Most of us do. I've already done that in this video numerous times, so you cannot say that I don't do that. I've seen Bane666AU do this. I've seen Spinosaurus do this. I've even seen Fiffin do this. I've seen Benna Talks do it. I've seen so many people on my side, quote unquote, give feminists the benefit of the doubt. Sargon does it regularly. I can't say I've seen much from their side. I've seen people do it, but not enough. The majority are just eager to paint us all in the same brush, because it suits their narrative. It allows them to hold the control they already have and to play the victim.
It's inconsistent.
You're right, it is inconsistent, and some people are guilty of this, but most of us are not. On the other hand,
if you're anti-MRA, you believe that no one deserves to be excluded because of their identity, then why do you not extend the same compassion to straight white men whose advantages have failed to protect them from being silenced, persecuted, and disenfranchised in their lives?
Because straight white men are the patriarchy and the enemies, even though technically all men are the patriarchy, it's specifically white males for some odd reason, because for some reason white males are the only people who have created empires in these feminists' minds, even though we've had African empires, we've had Middle Eastern empires, like the Ottoman Empire, which nearly took over Europe, nearly, they got stopped in Vienna. We've had other East Asian empires like China, Mongolia, Japan, who nearly beat the Allies in World War II, if it wasn't for intervention of several countries like the Soviet Union and America, etc, etc. Yet apparently straight white males, because they made some of the most successful empires of all time, are the problems. And by the way, they don't have any advantages. They don't have privileges. The only privilege is wealth, and most straight white males are not wealthy. But you're right, they should extend this courtesy, but they don't, because they are the enemy. They are the assigned enemy. They're the only people that you can actually criticize and mock and ridicule and be very extreme against, because all the rest have been designated as politically incorrect to do so. Most feminist SJWs are incapable of doing that, because they're bigoted, they're racist, they're classist, because they're attacking not really the rich people, but also the poor people, and their ideology simply cannot do that. But please continue.
To an anti-feminist, what I'm doing right now could easily be dismissed as censorship, right? I'm attacking men who refuse to play in the feminist sandbox, abusing my power and my influence to shame them into silence.
To an extent, yes, it is censorship, especially if they're stopping them from speaking, which is what they do. They dox them, they shame them, they send internet hate mobs against these men, and then claim victimhood when they may get an inevitable backlash from people when they do this. What's your point?
A feminist, on the other hand, might dismiss this video as tone policing, or what about the men? Because I'm encouraging feminists to be nicer to skeptics instead of encouraging skeptics to be more open-minded. I'm abusing my privilege in an effort to make the conversation more comfortable for myself. Except, I'm not actually doing either of those things. I'm saying that if you dismiss people for no other reason than that they appear to belong to a particular group based on their word choice, chosen labels, or appearance, you are part of the problem.
Again with the false equivalence though, mate, because most anti-feminists and MRAs don't do this. It's the feminists who mostly do this. Right now, anti-feminists, Woolly Bumblebee and her husband have a streaming show with notable radfem Kevin Logan. They're working together on a website as well, by the way. It wasn't Kevin Logan's idea to start that up as far as I'm aware, though I could be wrong. It was their idea to start this up along with some others like Aldous Valor. So you can see from our end, we are trying to build bridges. We have debated people like the Skeptic Feminist, in brackets, it's, if you know what I mean, people, and others. We have tried to do this. Most feminists don't. They block you. Even if you try to tag them in videos that you're responding to, they will at first argue, then block when they can't get their own way, when they can't convince you or they can't convince others. That is why they do what they do, because they don't want a discussion. We at least try to have a discussion. And I like how you say these words that they use. Well, if their words are actively doing these things, then of course they're wrong. And of course this is going to create polarization. It's the whole point of a debate, is it not? We can't all get along peacefully, sadly. Sometimes there has to be a bit of hostility. It's just the way it works, mate.
It doesn't matter how kind and compassionate feminists get, there will always be people who dismiss them because they sound like feminists. Guys, you are the problem.
They are a problem, not the problem, and these people should be called out, and they do get called out, because just dismissing someone because of their label is stupid, because nothing gets done. I have already mentioned this, and I agree with you on this. But when the vast majority of a movement against these MRAs are doing it, you can kind of understand why these guys will dismiss them in turn, because they will think, oh, they're not going to debate me or discuss things with me, they're just going to block me and accuse me of being a misogynist and shame me and send a Twitter hate mob on me. You can see why they do that, because time and time again, this happens to them. Some of them are idiots, and will do that anyway, but they're a minority on our side. In the feminist side, it's most of them. They're told to do this. They're told to block and silence these people because they're triggering, and they have harmful opinions. Do you not see where I'm getting at, mate? It's not so simple to create some kind of false equivalence and paint everyone as bad as each other, when in this game, in this debate, there is clearly a side that has done more harm than good, or is more guilty than the other.
It doesn't matter how humble and intersectional white men get, there will always be feminists who dismiss them because they just want to make it about them. You are the problem.
Yes, they are a problem, and they are the majority of the people creating this said problem. I don't think you realise just how one-sided this actually is, mate.
This is not a problem with the left or the right. This is not a problem with men or women. This is a problem with everybody. It's incredibly difficult to find any community that does not define itself in some way as oppositional to another group. It's getting worse, and it needs to stop.
It won't stop because the vast majority of the feminist movement don't want it to stop. They want to continue this. They need to hold on to their grip of power. And to do this, they have to do what you're describing. This minority of MRAs and MGTOWs and pickup artists, you know, I don't want to put them in the same breath, and the egalitarians like me, they're idiots. Or they're people who are fed up with the whole blocking and being shamed that they just do the same thing in return. Vast majority of us want to talk to these people. We want to discuss them, these issues, etc, etc. But we can't because we keep getting stopped, and there's not enough feminists and SJWs who are willing to chat with us, because they know that if they debate anything to do with these things, they will be rightfully outed as extremists and bigoted and wrong. That's why they don't do it. We don't really have anything to worry about. We can provide facts and evidence and back up our arguments. They can't, because it's a load of pseudo-scientific waffle. In fact, it's not even pseudoscience. It's kind of pseudo-philosophical or pseudo-political.
I mean, look, some feminists do hate men.
Mate, it's not some, it's a large number of them. And if they don't hate men, they're bigoted towards men, which kind of isn't necessarily hatred, but they do dislike men, maybe. I don't know. Bigotry is kind of synonymous, usually, isn't it? But I'm being nice to those ones. Their entire ideology is based on men being the enemy. Why do you think the patriarchy theory exists? It's to create the myth that men are the enemy, and always have been. And until we are defeated, we can never get equality. I mean, I don't get it. You know, at least I get the Scum Manifesto. That actually kind of makes sense in a dumb way. Men are the patriarchy is men, therefore we eliminate all men and the patriarchy's gone. That makes sense, doesn't it? What the other man-hating feminists and the bigots do is completely stupid. They think they can end the patriarchy and therefore solve all social ills, even though it won't. It's kind of different. It's more of a paradox with them. At least the Scum Manifesto makes a bit of sense. But anyway, I'm getting off on one, so please, next.
They don't want to see, hear, or interact with men. Some men do hate women. All these people are wrong. Hate is a lazy, short-sighted, cowardly perspective.
I agree with this wholeheartedly, mate. Hate is lazy. It really is, and we should be trying to talk to each other to solve these issues. But sadly, the majority of feminists hold these views in some capacity, and they don't want to talk to us, so it's an uphill struggle to get them to. I'm sorry, but that is how it is at the moment, and until something changes, it's most likely always going to be the case.
It's taking the easy way out. So please, take off the eye patch. We live in a three-dimensional world. Atoms and molecules aren't good or evil. If your goal is to spread your ideas, consider this. When someone from the other side treats you like dirt because you disagree with them, does that make you more likely or less likely to think about their perspective?
Oh, believe me, I know what you mean. It does make you feel less about them as people and not to concern yourself with their opinions, but I do that nonetheless. I have to do that, because if I don't, how am I supposed to get anything done? But the thing is, I only dismiss the people I know cannot be changed, who are ideologues who want to spread nothing but hate and control things and are authoritarians. And I think those are the people that deserve that kind of treatment. But the people who do want to discuss things, I'm open to. They just have to find me.
Yeah. Why would it work any differently for them?
Indeed, very true. And that's the end of the video, people. That's the end of the video. I disagreed with him on many points. I agreed with him on many points. I think trying to assign equal blame to both sides is a futile effort, because that's not how the situation is at the moment, and not how it started either. So, in the end, I hope this guy continues to make good content. It wasn't a bad video. It was just misinformed a little bit. And with that, I must leave you. See you later.